Hey nerds, Farmer Jesse here. Welcome to Grows Daily, your daily dose of ecological farming insight. It is Friday, January 24th, 2025, and today we're going to do the Feedback Friday thing. We'll discuss the frustrating world of gopher management science and one thing that benefits this show that I learned in kitchens, sort of. So let's do it. All right, well, sorry for missing yesterday, y'all. I was honestly scrambling to get a show done for you, and then I realized that it was going to be rushed and terrible, and I figured I'll just make a better show on Friday, and all will be forgiven, so no pressure there. Luckily, I won't have to miss, at least miss many, shows when I have a producer/editor. So on that note, if you are in the state of Kentucky, you will find in the show notes a link to apply for the producer/editor position for this podcast. This is a part-time on-site weekday position. Follow the link and fill out the application or share it with someone you know who might be interested. That would be rad. Thank you. All right. Yesterday morning, instead of rushing through your daily, I was at the Organic Association of Kentucky Conference, Oak, for a pre-conference workshop with Marissa Arnoldson from Oak, Daniel Mays of Frith Farm, Ian Zeglin of Green Acres Foundation Cincinnati, and Margaret Shea of Drop Seed Native Plant Nursery. And I was moderating a talk all about adding perennials to the landscape, and I promise to detail more of that and other things that I get to see at Oak this week, because there is just a lot going on there and in terms of awesome sessions. So yeah, expect a report back from me next week on all of that. Oak is putting a pretty heavy emphasis on silvopastures and perennials this year, which I think is cool and a little bit out of my typical wheelhouse. So yeah, lots of stuff fun to learn. More on the Oak stuff later though. For now, let's get to Feedback Friday. On Monday, we talked about country currency, and there were several comments I thought stood out, like this one from @ML5377, who writes, quote, "Peru here in Quechua, we have an awesome word and way of life called Aini, reciprocity. Although not everybody remembers it all the time, it still is a part of daily living. It is wonderful, and we try to spread the love all the time. I should add that we live in a little rural Andean village in the Andes at almost 10,000 feet above sea level. If you are from the Andes, or your parents or grandparents were, as is my case, you have that taught to you since you are young. It is sad to see newcomers, whether foreigners or nationals, arrive to establish in our area and try to impose their modern views and practices, trying to gain respect through money or buying consciences. We've lived here over 10 years, and we only know well the locals and their families, as well as two other foreign couples who think like us, older couples for that matter. I tell my kids when doom comes, we know who will help who." End quote. Thanks. And this term reciprocity or general reciprocity is something that several commenters noted, like at Angela Green 5144, who wrote, quote, "I'm sitting here in rural Alberta as a former anthropologist turned farmer and a little concerned you need to explain reciprocity. But also I lived in a big city for decades, so understand where it isn't the norm anymore for a lot of people, but it should be. Those community supports and connections are literally what makes us human. It builds resiliency in our society. It's like the Amish raising a barn in a day, but on a smaller day-to-day level. Think of all the stuff we could accomplish. Anyways, great episode like usual. Gonna go organize the indoor grow room and think about heavy things, LOL. End quote. Thanks. And yeah, in fact, reciprocity is a term I use a lot when describing ecological farming itself. For instance, the challenge with fitting farming into the modern economy is there is little to no incentive to replenish anything in our cash-based system, or at least not replenish adequately. For instance, most businesses are structured like buy a cheap widget, add value to the widget, sell the widget at a profit, repeat. Whereas farming is structured, grow the widget, sell the widget, take a huge chunk of the money you earned from the widget and pour it back into the soil that grew that widget so you can grow more of them. A healthy farm requires a great amount of soil reciprocity. In other words, you have to give back to the land to take from it, or you will exhaust the soil and it will no longer produce for you, which is why it's so incredibly difficult to fit farms into a cash sort of capitalistic economy, because these economies are about extraction. Farming is about reciprocity. And in many ways, farming communities reflect that in their interactions with each other. Give back or it will cease giving to you, and it won't be there when you need it. Great comments all over that one. Also deserving a special shout out is at BrokenMeats5928, who writes, I love all no-till growers videos on every one of our videos and has for years, which is amazing. Your dedication is unrivaled. Salute. And honestly, some days it's been nice to have your little positive nudge. So shouts to you. On Tuesday, we discussed time compression and how so many things we think of as history happened just not all that long ago. And there were some great comments on that thread as well, like this from at little KI1, who quoted a cab driver in Scotland as saying, quote, Scots think 300 miles is a long way and Americans think 300 years is a long time, end quote. I love that. And in my experience, it's very true across Europe. I have an Italian friend who, when you get into a conversation with them about almost anything, they're like, well, what you have to understand is that in 1648, right, it's all relative. I also mentioned in that episode that the Polynesians were traveling thousands of miles in canoes made with shells and bones and rocks for tools. So I appreciate this from at Power Prawnster, who emphasized that, quote, it was a bloody good canoe, though, not like just a little boat, proper technology, end quote. Indeed, a good point with emphasis. These are and were brilliant technologies by any standard. Then on Wednesday, I discussed a few things, but one of them was static aerated composting. And Ronald Cummings, 6337, asked, quote, wouldn't this be an active aerated compost pile? Static generally is used for piles that are not aerated or turned, end quote. Thanks, Ron. And so I believe what Ron is referring to there is how I mentioned that it's a good idea to turn the pile one time after a few days, notably after the regulation is met, to ensure even heat distribution for seed and weed management. But that would technically make it no longer static, which is partially why I believe it makes more sense to call it a static aerated pile rather than an aerated static pile, which is also a common way of referring to it. That and aerated static is phonetically very awkward to say, but it's really semantics. The organic regulations refer to it as static aerated pile, so we all just use that same term, even if it's only static for a few days before being turned and then soon thereafter moved before being left to mature statically. Also all relative. Anyway, great comments as always this week, friends. I think it's important to surround yourself with people who are smarter than you. And so, yeah, I get to do that even with my comments section. So I appreciate you all. Anyway, up next, let's get to a Patreon question, BRB. Today's episode of Growers Daily is brought to you by Harnwah Greenhouses. Harnwah Greenhouses has pioneered controlled environment agriculture since 1965, partnering with market gardeners and farmers across North America to deliver turnkey greenhouse solutions. Their unwavering mission is to support growers' success through innovation and expertise in design, manufacturing, and installation. Harnwah Greenhouses are engineered to withstand high wind and snow loads, providing optimal brightness, increased yields, rapid ROI, and long-lasting durability. With over 20,000 projects completed, they are more than a manufacturer. They are a trusted partner. Their structures foster sustainable, energy-efficient ecosystems that drive profitable, resilient agriculture. In 2025, Harnwah is introducing a new low-tech, high-tunnel model starting at just $2 per square foot, offering open field growers an accessible entry into controlled environment agriculture. Harnwah Greenhouses, leading the way in turnkey solutions for local growers. Learn more at harnwah.com. That's HARNOIS.com. All right, back to the show. If you, the listener, are enjoying this content, getting even a small amount of value from it, consider supporting our work over at patreon.com/no-till-growers. I will try to get to questions from everywhere the questions come in, but I will always get to your Patreon questions now. Today's Patreon question comes from Patreon member Marinda, who writes, quote, Hi, Jesse. I really enjoy watching your podcast as I get ready in the morning. Your scientific approach mixed with experience, humor, and honesty are truly unique and are a great way to start the day. Thanks, Marinda. We are wannabe homesteaders, gardening in between our full-time jobs and 4-year-old twins. We plant around 40 to 50 pounds of seed potatoes that we save every year. We usually have some gopher damage, but last year they probably destroyed at least 30% of my crop. We try to not completely eradicate natural pests since they usually have some role in the healthy ecosystem, and we don't mind some crop loss, but this is a bit excessive for us. We heard from an old-timer that horseradish can keep gophers at bay, but from the brief research I've done, it looks like gophers will eat these too because, well, they're gophers. I was wondering if you have run across any studies that demonstrate companion plantings that have significant efficacy as a gopher repellent, and if there is a planting strategy to maximize any benefits. I know it's not likely, but I figure it was worth an ask. We have tried some gopher traps with mixed results, but they just seem risky to have out with young children around. We also have 6 cats. Animal dumping is coming here, but they mostly think their job is to hold the bed down. Thanks. End quote. Okay, so great question, Marinda. And I honestly hadn't looked into research on companion planting and gophers, so this was fun nudge for me, or I thought it would be. Unfortunately, there is just very little in the literature about this particular subject. Not that there aren't plants that gophers do and don't like, and some strategies you could try, and I will highlight a couple here. Rather, gopher management, according to the research, really requires a full gopher management plan. There are no simple passive fixes, and of those fixes, seemingly not a lot that rely on plants. Now, it seems every area where gophers are a problem has some good guidance on creating a gopher management plan for organic farms, from UC Davis to Montana State University and beyond. Using those resources to develop a good management plan is where I would start. And then that way you can start utilizing some plants and slowly determine what does and doesn't work without losing all of your hard work to gophers while you figure it out. One notably amusing thing, if that's the right word, when reading about gopher management is that the gophers really love no and low tillage techniques, cover crops, especially legumes and taller crops, plus tarps and mulches. Essentially everything that the soil loves or that farmers love, gophers love it more. Interestingly, considering how much damage these animals can do to agricultural land, there is a supreme lack of actual research on plants as a deterrent. I spent way too much time trying to find examples and only continued on because I was so fascinated at the dearth of information. One UC Davis integrated pest management pamphlet suggested, quote, "No repellents have proven effective at protecting gardens or other plantings from pocket gophers. Plants such as gopher purge, Euphorbia lathyrus, castor bean, Ricinus communis, and garlic have been suggested as repellents, but research has not substantiated these claims," end quote. Okay, well, what's weird to me is that it's also not clear to me that research has tried to substantiate them. Also, many publications suggest a 50-foot buffer around hayfields of grain crops, but I cannot find the original study that this recommendation stems from. Not saying it doesn't exist, but I cannot for the life of me, and frankly for the amount of time I have per episode to spend on this, find that citation. It always just goes uncited, which drives me absolutely bananas. I love reading citations. As a short digression, I once read this really sensational book about a politically charged topic, and 90% of this content either went without a supporting citation, meaning the authors offered nothing to back up the claim, or the citation actually disproved what they were saying, or at best the citation had literally nothing to do with the claim they were making. I spent so much time reading that book just because of how fun I found finding these mistakes was. And just pro tip, if you want to know if something is completely BS, the author will likely start by saying something like, "Fact check me," or "You can fact check this," because they know the average person won't do it and just take their word on good faith. But I will read those citations because that's the most fun part. Anyway, I am surprised there are not more, or at least more visible, studies on plant buffers and rodents. Certainly anecdotes abound, and you are welcome to try some of those and plants and get back to us and let us know how it goes. But it is wild that more research hasn't been dedicated to this issue, considering how devastating gophers can be. So anyway, if you find any good studies on plant deterrents and rodents, or if you have conducted any effective trials, let us know. Otherwise, I suggest getting a full gopher management plan together and starting there. That's a subject I will tackle specifically as time goes on as well. I honestly wish I could have been more helpful there. It's actually a little frustrating, but I just did not find what I thought I would find about this particular subject. It still has me a little baffled. So yeah, make a good management plan. Try to get some of those crops that get anecdotal recognition, some of them likely derived from ancestral knowledge, and see how it works. And to your point about the ecology, maybe add in some more of those, predator habitats for hawks and owls and those sorts of things. Otherwise, we're going to take a quick break, and when we return, we will talk about being in the flow. I feel like I was kind of in the flow on that digression about citations. Yeah. Anyway, be right back. Today's episode of Growers Daily is brought to you by Peaceful Heritage Nursery. If you're looking for hardy and resilient fruit trees, berry plants, or pawpaw trees, then check out Peaceful Heritage Nursery. Peaceful Heritage Nursery LLC is a mail-order nursery shipping premium quality fruit trees and berry plants across the USA. They specialize in resilient, non-GMO plant genetics for small growers. Their diverse selection includes berries, cold hardy figs, passion fruit, gumi, mulberry, and much more. They're famous for their diverse selection of premium quality grafted pawpaw trees. 5-star Google ratings and customer testimonials attest to their commitment to excellence in quality and service. Find them at peacefulheritage.com and join their mailing list. Once again, find them at peacefulheritage.com. Use the promo code Notill, all caps, one word, for 10% off your first order. All right, back to the show. All right, so because I spent so much time investigating that last segment, I didn't leave a lot of time for a super interesting third segment. But the thing is, I actually like being restricted on time. I find time constraints to be one of the most effective forms of inspiration, which I've discussed on this show before, but I like that feeling of focus that being up against a clock forces on you. I worked in kitchens as a cook for many, many years. My first 8 or so years of employment were almost exclusively in kitchens. And one of the big realities of being a cook is that no matter how many orders come back and no matter how much time you have, and you have to get them done in, there is no option to just stop what you're doing and walk off the line and go think about it. Well, I guess there is the option of just walking off the line, and I've seen people walk out during service, forcing everyone else to cover them. But if you care about the people around you, the people who are all doing this incredibly bonkers work, you can't just walk out on them in the middle of the service. You put your head down, dig deep, and find that next gear. You're kind of forced to learn this economy of motion. That is how to be efficient with your movements. Never going up or down the stairs or to and from the dish tank without taking something and bringing something back. You learn to stay focused and calm under pressure, under noise, under anger, heat, and sometimes hangovers. Okay, most of the time hangovers. Being in the middle of a service when the rush hits, it's almost like an altered state on its own. And psychologists actually call it flow state. The minutes move slow, but the hours move fast. It's a blur, it's a dance, it's a rhythm. And then you clean up and get ready to do it again tomorrow. Shift drink, make your list, mise en place, head out for the night. I don't miss that lifestyle, but I sometimes miss that flow state. And it's kind of fun when I get to experience it again. Sometimes I know when I'm up against the clock and I'm rushing to get the notes for a segment get the editing done, I slip back into that state for a few minutes, block everything out, and I just go. I know I'd probably not be very good at cooking at that level anymore, but I value that experience greatly. Some of the ways in which cooking in a busy kitchen oriented my brain and gave me skills that not only helped me on my farm, but helped me for this show. I think any job can inform what you do next in your life, but I truly don't think I could do this show or run my farm, or I guess run both at the same time, if it wasn't for my kitchen work. I have a few scars from that, certainly. Deep cuts and burns, maybe just a tiny amount of psychological damage from getting screamed at on a daily basis, which fortunately is no longer quite as pervasive as it once was in kitchens. But I got to keep as many skills as I have scars. So I'm thankful for that ability to tap into the flow being prime among them. However, I will say that watching that show, The Bear, is a bit triggering, if I'm being honest, and the way that they ended the last season should be outlawed. I'm just going to go ahead and say that. But anyway, shouts to all my cooks and chefs friends out there. I hope everyone has a great weekend. If you see me at Oak, say hi. If you see me somewhere else this weekend, it's probably not me, but it doesn't hurt to say hi to people like that. Huge shouts to Willie Breeding for the theme music and to the team at Notill Growers. Also, shouts to Epidemic Sound for the background music you hear. Pick up a copy of the Living Soil Handbook or The Seed Farmer by Dan Brisebois over at notillgrowers.com to support our work. Big thank you to everyone at patreon.com/notillgrowers, where at a certain level, or if you just sign up from one level to another, or if you just sign up in the month of January, you get a shout out on the show. So big shout outs today to, it's always so fun. Okay, who we got? Rob Garrett, Travis Lindquist, and Jem. That's a good trio. I mean, this is clearly the story of a team of cyclists in the Tour de France in the 1980s who get really far behind the pack, and a mysterious man on a horseback offers them a shortcut to get back in the race. Two of them take the shortcut and the other one doesn't. I'll leave it to you to figure out who's who. And they all end up in very different races. except the man on horseback. He was just drunk. Anyway, thanks for watching and or listening. Have a great weekend. We will see you on Monday. Bye.